Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Amory. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Today, I'm joined with Kristian Einstman of Polyam Proud, and I'm so excited for the conversation that we are going to have. And I have to admit, and Kristian, I'm sure you and I will get into this, but I have to admit that it's been like a long time coming, this conversation, and I never would have guessed that it was coming. So I'll let you give a little bit more background about Polyam Proud and what that is. And all I know is you've been on my radar for a while on Instagram, popping up with all these questions about a flag for the polyamorous community. And yeah, and in the beginning, I'm like, nah, I just don't it's okay. And then little by little, I was like, actually, wait a second, hold on. I do care about this. So I just want to thank you for bearing with me because you were so fantastic and you and your group in outreach. Yeah, and here you are. So, Kristian.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, happy to be here. And yeah, I'm excited to get into that and to talk about like what that turning point was for you. But yeah, I'm Kristian, and I'm with Polyam Proud.
And we just found out you're from Chicago, or you live in Chicago.
Yes, I live in Chicago. I'm originally from Long Island, New York. And then I lived in upstate New York during undergrad, and then grad school I did out in Vegas. Which was a huge change. And then after that, and working in Vegas for a couple of years in marketing, I do hear that construction, actually. I'm so sorry.
So I'm going to apologize to the listeners. I only have 1 hour of quiet in my building, and it's supposed to be from 12 to 1, and it is 12:07, and they're still doing construction. And I'm just going to have like a little moment to vent. Like, you know how hard it is to record a podcast when they have construction noises all day, every day during the week for 3 months. Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for letting me vent. You won't hear much. If you hear it, you hear it. Like, this is my life right now. So anyway, back to Chicago. So you moved there a couple of years ago?
Moved there in when was the pandemic? 2020? Mm-hmm. I moved there in 2019.
We've already forgotten it.
We've already forgotten. when did that thing happen?
When was that thing?
Which is a nice place to be, honestly. But yeah, I moved there in 2019. So I had like 6 months-ish, 8 months
Did you even have a
pandemic.
community?
No.
Oh God, how was that, being in a place where you didn't have community and you're literally cut off anyway from everything?
Yeah, I mean, really challenging, as you can imagine. So I moved there with my partner, and so we were still getting settled in, and we had met a couple of people, but mostly through, like, I was so starved for community because I was also working remotely even at that time before the pandemic, because my job was still back in Vegas. I was so starved for community that I was using dating apps to find friends. I was like, because Bumble has like a BFF feature, like to find friends.
I'm sure you're not alone. I mean, it really is a smart way to reach out to people.
It was one of the only ways I could think of. I mean, there's an app called Meetup where you can go to little like activity things, and there was just nothing that really appealed to me. But yeah, and so I had met a couple of people that way. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like, well, that's it.
Yeah.
I had like between 2 and 5 people in my immediate community that I could like see, actually.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I was in New Zealand. Like, I didn't have anybody except my little family. Luckily, I was living with both Marty and Kyle and my kids then. And so it was like our little bubble. That was it. But I got to tell you, I'm so happy that we can meet up now. And my social game is like in full swing, and I'm loving it. And yeah. One more question about Chicago. Where do you live?
Sure.
Good nostalgia.
Like Lakeview.
Yeah.
Kind of actually. So the edge of Lakeview and Lincoln Park is Halstead.
Yeah. Halstead.
And I live right there.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
So you're like right in Boys Town. You're like,
yeah, basically.
Spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Sweet. Okay. So now on to the purpose of our discussion. How did I have so many questions. I want to learn about you personally, and I want to learn about you in this project that you're doing. That's actually a really big project, rallying the polyamorous community around a flag.
Okay.
And I mean, I'll go a little bit more into depth about my perspective on that and why I think it's so cool that we can talk now, because I realized, it's probably yesterday I was thinking about the conversation with you, and I'm like,
Hmm.
God, why was it that just wasn't on my radar? And I think it's just because I've never identified with a group. I
Mm.
think I've always been such a loner and like, I just kind of do my own thing and that's okay. And, and maybe other people feel the same way too. And that's why it's not like it's hard to rally. It's like herding cats, maybe, of
Yeah.
for people that maybe have like always just kind of done their own thing, and now
Yeah.
it's an actual opportunity. It just hit me in one moment where I'm like, God, no, this is actually an opportunity to feel connected at a
Mm.
much larger scale to a whole group of people. And obviously that's been the whole point with Amory and like wanting to connect and everything, but it never occurred to me to have a like the need for a visual representation of that. So I'm going to just hand it over to you at that point, and you
Sure.
can share what you want to share about.
Yeah. So when I first kind of came to non-monogamy as a practice, um, intentionally anyway, with some knowing of polyamory and how to practice non-monogamy ethically, um, I really struggled with not so much imposter syndrome, but a kind of feeling of this need for like a third party validity.
Mm.
Like I really felt myself struggling with, and I talked to my therapist about it all the time, where I kept saying like, I wish I could just have like a certification card that says like, I'm polyamorous for real. I'm not just like, I'm not like saying it, or like, I'm not saying that I'm polyamorous, and what I intend to do actually is like settle down as like a monogamous person when I find the one. Um, I
Oh,
like really felt,
interesting.
yeah, I
Uh-huh.
felt this desire to
Yeah.
like separate myself um, from people who talk the talk, but maybe don't walk the walk.
That's really interesting. Is it because when you found out about this relationship structure, were you single at that point? Was that
No.
like your entry point? No. Okay. I was wondering if because I found out about it when I was already in a long-term marriage. So
Yep.
that for real part is really interesting. Yeah. Can I ask you more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So
Hmm.
I was in a long-term monogamous relationship, and I had been going to therapy for a couple of years, um, because I was experiencing symptoms of chronic depression, and other things, and I just thought, um, and I found that I felt good when I was like either not so much pursuing, but like living within multiple romantic partnerships. Though those were at the time, I mean, you would consider them infidelity. Um, and I, I just thought that it was so wrong that
Mm.
I was intentionally going to therapy to like correct it, like to correct that behavior. And it
Well,
was,
you and so many people, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
yeah,
general narrative, is that it's wrong to feel connected to more than one person, or the desire to feel connected. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And I was so lucky to have multiple therapists, over the course of a couple of years, that really understood what I what I was communicating, though I wasn't communicating it directly. And they suggested, like, have you ever heard of polyamory? Do you think that you might find yourself at home in this life or in this like identity? Um, and at first I was like, no, that's not me. That's not what this is. That's like a lack of, that's like if I was to say, yes, I'm polyamorous, that would feel to me like I have failed my partner. And that I'm just not trying hard enough to be monogamous. And so I actually, I like saw a different therapist after that, because I didn't want to accept that. And I didn't want to, I was just like running from the truth, I guess.
Did you feel though? Did you ever feel like maybe there wasn't something wrong with you? You know, was there ever like a little voice inside your head that was like, well, maybe this isn't, am I not broken?
You know, I think there was a voice I think instead it was this sort of frustrated voice that was like, why does no one else understand what I am feeling? Or like, why does no one else want what I want? Like, why am I so strange for this? But not putting it like on me, putting it on other people, you know, putting it on like,
there's such a like male female dynamic in that. It really is. Cause I know and I don't want to generalize, but like for me and many females I've talked to, or many women I've talked to, are like, oh no, it's like, what's wrong with me? A lot of guys are like, what's wrong with the world? Yeah,
that's so funny. I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but it makes sense. I feel now actually more of that sentiment. Like now that I have been within this community for a few years and have been practicing it for a little while, I think I do sometimes come up against this, like, what is, like, I wish I wasn't like this.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, this goes to the bigger point, why I think polyamory or open relating or all of this is just such a beautiful journey, because it really brings us to ourselves. And it's not just this way that we could say, well, why am I like this? Do I have to be like this? You know, even now, there's so many parts of myself that I'm still working on integrating and being like, it's okay that I'm like this, you know, this is me, and that's okay. You know, seeing ourselves in the way that we choose to relate or what works best for us in relationships, that's one aspect, but it's all part of the same process, right?
Yeah.
Like accepting, okay, this is how I am.
Yeah. I think the acceptance thing is like it's like anything. You know, when people are like, well, the what do I want to be when I grow up is like happy, right? But that's, happiness isn't a destination. Like acceptance isn't a destination. It's like a moment. And so like you have moments of happiness and you have moments of acceptance, and maybe that moment lasts a year, or maybe that moment lasts 2 days. But it comes and it goes, and it'll come back and it'll go again. And it's just like, I think for me, and maybe this is like talking to what I have learned mostly in non-monogamy, is like fluidity and flux are the drivers of like all things in such a big way. And that like to like think of anything, especially a person, and then especially two people, and then especially more than two people, and those relationships between all of those people, to think of those things as static, is like, I don't know, like it's like trying to ice skate on sandpaper. It's just like not, you're not going to go anywhere.
That's a great image. Yeah, exactly. But isn't it funny that we grow up with that interpretation, you know, of things being static? You know, it really is interesting. It's kind of like, that's the aim. The aim is to be static, but I actually don't think it's the aim. I think it's our desire, like our mind's desire to want to fully understand things at all times. And the only way for that to be possible is if things didn't change. And so when things change, it's very scary, because that is the unknown. And I think that triggers our nervous system, like, oh God, the unknown. And that, you know, if anybody changes, if anything changes, that puts us back into a state of vulnerability and needing different skills in that area. And I think that that's why when you can embrace the unknown, you actually allow for more fluidity. You allow for more dynamic. You don't have to cling to your version of safety in the control of your surroundings or even of yourself. I could just be like, oh, things are always changing. Like, I'm changing. My mind is going to come along for the ride.
Yeah.
Like, that has been the biggest shift for me. Is like, mind, I love you. We love to categorize things and call things names and understand things, but that only happens after. It doesn't happen during. Or if you're about to head into something, then that has to be led by a whole different part. And to me, the way I conceptualize that, again, because my mind needs it, is my heart. Like, if I'm following my heart, I'm not going to understand. I'm not going to know. If I can create safety, I can do it,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's really something so interesting about that, like, need to place language on a thing. But knowing that the experience of the universe, how did we get here?
I don't know. We're not talking about the flag, that's for sure, but I'm loving it. Like, let's keep going.
Yeah. The experience of the universe is so infinite, and language is so finite. And even our vocabulary can only, we can only retain and recall so many words at a time. And something, I feel like I see comments on polyamorous content creators' Instagram posts and stuff, and people who are like, this isn't real love, like, y'all don't know what love is. And it's like, okay, Ashley from Indiana, who is 19, what is love really? Like, you it's like, why do you know any more than we do? Why? Because love, the word love, is this so tiny one syllable word,
I know, that
tries to encapsulate this, like, vast and possibly infinite experience. And like, love, like, the word love is just like this insane shorthand that we, like, try to use to like get at that idea. And it's just like, it's so impossible for people to even in ancient Greek, there's like all these different words for love, like different types of love. And I think that's really handy. There's like maybe 8 or 9 of them.
Yeah, there's more than one, that's for sure.
More than one. And I think that's like great, and still not enough.
No, exactly. Yeah, I find myself lacking vocabulary immensely in this. Yeah, and I don't, and even if we had it, would it really make a difference? I would love to be in a world where it's that we wouldn't even be stopped by language. However, we are in bodies and we live in this 3D world. And the only way that you and I are communicating right now and sharing our inner worlds is through language. And language is ridiculously inadequate, and it's the best tool we have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm fascinated with language. I learned French when I was 17. I lived in Belgium. I learned Spanish when I was 20. I lived in Spain for a year. I'm really fascinated, and it's still so lacking, but the only way I can understand, again, with language, is that I've built out an inner world in me. I have a mental model. I have a model of what I think reality is. And I use words to communicate that model from me to you. And even then, meaning, like, we could get into meaning. And I mean, that's where I love playing, because meaning is a relationship, right? And so meaning is the way that we relate. Like, it's the juicy part in between this thing and that thing, right? Me and the thing is the way that I relate to that. And that is the meaning of the thing to me. Because the thing is just a thing, like, we could call a chair, but it's only like, I use that word and you understand what I'm talking about, but it's there's so much more that lies in between that word, but this is why I think everything comes back to relationships, and why polyamory and open relating is so fascinating, because it is an experiential way of us starting to get at the nature of relating.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So that we become the empowered person in our lives to say, well, how do I relate to this other person? And what does that mean for me? And how do I view myself through that other person? And all of it just mirrors back right to us. And the more people that we can connect to, in hopefully an ethical way that's not hurting other people,
Yeah.
the more mirrors we have back to us reflecting, reflecting different parts of us, reflecting opportunities to grow, reflecting maybe some trauma areas that aren't quite healed yet,
Mm.
all of these different places.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it, as a way to, and maybe this is what you were talking about before too, like a way to learn more about the self through relating to other people. Yeah.
How
The
else do we learn about the
mirrors.
self? Without any interaction,
Yeah.
the self wouldn't know itself.
True. Yeah, like we wouldn't even maybe understand. Okay, so I relate, therefore I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Right? Descartes, we changed it, we've modernized it.
Update.
Update version 2.0. Awesome. This is great. I love this. First conversations with me, we were saying right before we started the podcast, it's just like, wait, don't tell me anything yet about you because I want to record it all. And then I just love wherever conversations can head. And a philosophical tangent on the nature of words, and it's fascinating. Well, let's head back. I'm going to bring us back to
Great.
Where we were heading. I'm also interested to learn more about your relationship and your relationship structure for what you want to share, just so people can learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so currently I have two, I guess, steady long-term partners, one nesting partner, or live-in partner for those who need the definition. And they are, it's I guess you could call it kitchen table polyamory. They're quite good friends. They are not in a romantic relationship with each other, but they're in very much a loving platonic relationship. So that's one of those relationships has been like 12 years, I want to say, maybe a little more. And the other has been 2 years. So significantly newer. And there are some challenges with that, but I think we've gotten to a place where even through the challenges, it feels wonderful. So that's I guess kind of where my relationships are at. But I think it was because of that, like coming to that and that feeling of like, I wish I had this like kind of validity, that I started searching for a way to do that. Like I started looking for the equivalent of a rainbow flag bumper sticker, that I could put on my car for polyamory, to be kind of like, this is me, and I'm almost like kind of an accountability thing. Like I'm holding myself accountable to the polyamorous identity, if we want to call it that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
An accountability around it. In what way?
Well, I think it comes back to the like notion of proof. And I know that there's like some discourse around whether, first of all, whether polyamory can be considered an identity, or whether it is simply a relationship orientation or a lifestyle choice or whatever. I know that for me, it feels like an identity, and it feels like a queer identity specifically for me. And I think a lot of ways because it has like ostracized me from a lot of people in my life. But I think I had this fear coming to it that I just wouldn't be listened to, or that I wouldn't be believed, that like oh, you're just saying that you're polyamorous so that you can do XYZ thing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I it felt like if I had a flag or like a symbol or something that I could like feel more integrated in that identity and embody it more, and then be able to point to it and say like, no, I'm the real deal, as if there's like a non-real deal, I guess. I don't know.
Was that the origination then? Did you come up with this idea to want to kind of redesign the flag? Have you connected with other, I think you work with a team, like
Hmm.
there's other people in this project. How did that start to coalesce?
Oh yeah. So it did kind of it was my idea to redesign the flag, but that I'm not by any means the only person that has had that idea. Um, and I found that out really quickly after trying to design, like I created my own design of the flag, and I wanted to use it, but it didn't make sense to use it if other people didn't use it or see it or know about it. So I was like, well, how can I get people to see it? And my first thought, which I think is like a lot of people's first thought about, how do I connect with people about polyamory, is like go to Reddit for some reason. Like go to the polyamory subreddit. So I posted it there, and people were like, oh, I like this. And other people were like, oh, stop designing flags. And I was like, what do you mean? And then I looked and I saw tons of people had done the same thing.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like, well, nothing's ever going to come of it then. Because if people are just doing this over and over, like designing new flags, and some of them are just really similar to each other, and it's like people are just not seeing uh, these flags enough. And like if they don't get any use besides one Reddit post and then one person's bedroom wall, then what use are they? Um, and so like maybe a week and a half after I posted my design, someone else posted it, a different design on Reddit, and I was like, hey, I already did this. Conversation is over. I already did the flag thing.
I already did the flag thing. It's done.
Yeah, it's done. Thanks for your contribution, but I already handled it. I don't know what I was thinking. But I felt like affronted in some way, and I was like, hey, I posted this thing, and he was like, well, I don't like. I like your design too, but like if no one sees it, then blah. So we got to talking. He messaged me,
Yeah.
and we were talking. His name is Jan, and he's from the Netherlands, and we were just talking about how we didn't like the original flag, the pie flag. It's like blue, red, black stripe with a pie symbol on it, and all the issues with it. And I think for me, the big reason for not liking it is that it doesn't get used. And it doesn't get used because people don't like it.
Yeah.
Aesthetically. And I'm not so worried about the like aesthetic part of it. I just know that people don't use it and people don't recognize it, and it doesn't make sense. And I think another big thing for me was the infinity heart. Like a lot of people would just basically recreate that exact flag, the pie flag, but replace the pie symbol with an infinity heart symbol. And that to me was also inadequate because that symbol is recognized by a lot of people, at least in the US, to mean infinite, like, and by infinite, I mean everlasting love. So infinite in time, not infinite in as like a resource. And that's not a non-monogamous like notion or ideal. So it just felt like, and also I think it there's a lot of issues with the infinity heart, in my opinion. But so he got to talking to me about, well, like, what if we work together? I wonder if that's ever been done, where like two people who try to design a flag work together to design something that more people will like. And I was like, sure. And so it initially just started as this kind of like little design project. And then we were like, well, actually, what if this could be bigger? Like, what if we, instead of designing a flag, get a bunch of flags together and then have people vote so that they have actually a choice in what they're using. And that's kind of how the project was born.
Oh, no, it's amazing that it came out of the desire. Yeah, it's actually such a beautiful process because it's so bringing people together. And now I think you shared that you've got over 20,000 people that have signed up to do this vote, and it sounds international.
Yep.
I'm wondering if your stats are kind of like Amory listener stats. Like it's pretty spread out.
Yeah.
Like it's not just in the US and Canada, and it's just like it's pretty international.
No, so we were initially, like, when we thought we might do this, we were like, okay, if we're going to do this, we want to do it in the way that is like, that we think is the right way, which I guess is maybe like what everyone thinks about projects that they take on. But for us, that meant like, be ambitious and then don't settle for like a result that doesn't equal the sort of like ambitious goal. And the ambition was, this flag should be global, and therefore people from other places that are not just English speaking, people that are not just American, or like not even like people who are not just like in the Western world, in Western culture, can also have this symbol, because flags and symbols like this that are visual and that transcend language, are so important to building global community. Like when you hear about like LGBT protests in Russia, and you see pictures of those events, they look exactly like they do in the US. They look exactly like they do in Germany. They look exactly, like, because the rainbow flag is there. And it sends a powerful message about quantity. Like, how many of us are there, and how many of us are affronted by the current system, like whether it's a legal system or a social system or whatever.
No, thank you. I've had to mute myself several times so that we don't hear the construction noise that's probably still coming through. But yeah, it's really interesting. And I go back to that comment of my initial idea was the lack of feeling connected, or just having never been connected to a group, or not even understanding the power in numbers. I know that when I was interviewed for Vogue, and they featured our story in April edition, and like it's crazy. It was a little bit more of what they shared was a little bigger than how I thought it was going to be. But anyway, in the article, it said 20% of people have either practiced non-monogamy or are currently practicing. And that's the same number of people that own cats. It's like, you think about it in that perspective. And I'm like, that's a lot. That's what Amy Moore has said. And I know she's on one of the board, or one of the panels or boards for the APA. For polyamory, and has done a lot of research around it. And it's crazy. So like you said, identifying that we are part of this group. I actually want to go back to that comment that you made around identity, because I'm really torn personally. I think part of me, I just have this personality where I'm like, like, what is identity? I feel like I've shed identity so many times. And I feel like if I get attached to this as an identity and then for some reason my relationship structure changes, which I'm open to, like if I happen to just be with one person, or it's like, I want to leave that open to be like, I can change my relationship structure whenever I want to. And then, but if I get overly attached to polyamory as an identity, what happens? Like it's crushing. When you have to let go or break down an identity, or it doesn't have to. I mean, I've gone through the process enough where I'm like, all right, sweet, shedding my identity again. Let's do it. Like we build up our identities and then we take them down, or they get taken down for us. And then that's a little bit harder. So some part of me is like, do I need to relate to this like it's my identity? And then the other part is like, fuck yeah, like I want to feel connected to people all around the world. And I want to know that there's more people going through this and not just me. And again, that was the whole beginning place for Amory, was to share this experience that my partners and I were going through. And I'm like, God, is anybody else going through this? So there is power, it feels so good to feel connected to people that can understand you, that are also going through similar life experiences. And so I do know that the power of identity is really strong. I don't think our egoic self would exist if we didn't attach some, have some idea of who are we in the world. Like our ego needs that in order to, I think, survive. God, the construction noise. I'm really, really frustrated. Maybe I hand it back over to you while they're making this massive noise.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, so for me, and identity is also fluid. And I think that's like a really important thing, or a really important notion to come to, is that like, even when you claim an identity, like this is who I am, this is who I'm going, like how I'm going to present myself to the world. That is like everything subject to change and subject to growth. And I think it's interesting what you said, because it sounds to me like you are maybe, the way that you see polyamorous identity is based on a relationship structure, like the polyamorous identity is contingent on the relationship structure. But I don't think that that's the case. To me, I think that you can very well be a polyamorous person and be single, or be a polyamorous person and have only one monogamous partner. Because I think a big part of being polyamorous isn't the relationships that you're in, it's the relationships that you desire to be in.
This is such an interesting conversation, because it's bringing up some really great things for me. And I don't know if I've ever vocalized it, so bear with me. I think that for me, it's really funny because, okay, how do I describe this? It's almost like, for me, the polyamorous identity is bigger than polyamory, if I can say it that way. It is to the point where it's like, to me, polyamory is a journey of me breaking down social scripts and feeling empowered to write my own. And that, to me, goes beyond relationships.
Yeah.
So for me, if the polyamorous flag represents anything, it's just this ability to live life by one's own design and not based on the social scripts that we've been given. And I think that goes for like so many other areas of our life. And that's where I feel like I get a little pigeonholed in Amory itself, where it's like, I desire for it to be bigger. I want to connect with even more people, even beyond relationship structure, that this is like a way of looking at life. Like that's how big this perspective is for me, and where I keep going back to. And yes, I do. For me, I call it a relationship structure. And I think that is a little easier for me to relate. Although in my heart, I'm like, I've always been like this.
Yeah.
Always. Like I've always, since high school, I had like crushes on, 10 different guys at a time. And, it was like I could always see beautiful things that I could admire in everyone that I met. And I
Yeah.
never understood. And even friends that were like, well, you can't be friends with her because you're friends with me. And I'm like, why not? I
Yeah.
like both of you. It's not my problem you don't like each other, but I like both of you. And so I feel like it has always been me, but it doesn't necessarily just mean that it's the polyamorous identity. It's like an open identity, that fluidity, that understanding. And I recorded a podcast with on someone else's show, and we were talking about this way to kind of flip out lenses of reality. And I think that that's what this allows for, is like, you could go so far. It's like, how attached are we to the different lenses that we view ourselves in the world? And
Sure.
for me, I can flip those out quickly enough. Even this is a super extreme example and one I used on the other podcast. And that's sometimes I can believe that I'm everything. I'm the creator of my world. I'm the one that is constructing this life. It's like up to me. I feel super empowered. Sometimes that thought is what I need in order for me to take action. Sometimes I need the opposite thought. Sometimes I need like, I'm a speck of dust. I am nothing in this universe. After I die, it will not matter. And because I need to take myself more lightly and be like, Megan, it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. Like, do the thing. Like, you're nothing. Just kind of like, it's kind of, and those you would say are opposites, but at the same time, I think flip-flopping them, they're not opposed to each other. It's like you can flip-flop based on which one is more helpful in the situation. And I think that when I was growing up, the fact that I could do that so often, people looked at me and they would call me flaky or indecisive or changing my opinion too much. But to me, it was like, well, they're all there all the time. Which one do you want to put on? It's like, which costume do you want to put on for a little bit? The I'm everything or I'm nothing costume. It's like, meh, it's the same. And I actually think that we need that. Like, we need that ability to have, like, hold polarized views, because that actually is like, that is the problem I think that we're having right now, is like the inability to hold the opposite and what we would call like the contrary belief at the same time. It's like, can we exist in paradox? I don't know how I got to paradox when we were talking about, I'm tempted to apologize, but I'm not, because it's just how my brain works. But thank you for being with me.
Yeah, no, I mean, talking about the nature of identity and what it is to identify, and also its usefulness, I think definitely is a conversation about the everythingness and the nothingness of ourselves. I think because the question of like the conversation around identity begins with this question of like, who am I? But just also, that little question. Just that little question. But also, why? Right? Like, why do I behave this way? Why do I want the things that I want? And I think using this like kind of vocabulary to identify oneself, like we were talking about earlier, is a shorthand for saying, when you say I'm polyamorous, what you're saying is, maybe in your case, I am open to a style of relationship that is other than monogamous.
Yeah. ...
Yeah. Right.
Or I believe that it's possible to love more than one person at a time.
Sure.
That's to me, that I am polyamorous. It's like, I have this belief.
Yeah.
Dictating then my actions.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. Like, I have this belief is an interesting thought too, because to me, it's like, I know that this is true. Rather than...
So I know that this is true. Like, the you that you are, like, you have this truth. And do you extrapolate that and say, well, this is the truth? Or is it just, I know that this is true for me?
I think it's like, I know that everything is fluid, and I know that polyamory resembles the fluidity of nature. And I know that identity resembles the fluidity of nature. And if all of those things are true,
It's like a logic proof.
then I can say that I'm polyamorous. I don't know.
And that is your truth, or is that the truth, as in the nature of relating is this way? Because I think this is where people get into combative stances, like, is it because it's true for you? Does that mean it has to be true for everyone? And I think actually this is like on a bigger scale. I think we are headed from a binary vision of the world of like right or wrong to this really beautiful and ridiculously different non-binary, complex, multidimensional spectrum of everything. And that to our little brains that haven't quite gotten the upgrade yet, we're working on the upgrade. It's like, but wait, if I believe this is true and you believe something else is true, does one of us have to be right and one of us have to be wrong? Or can we both have a truth? And can we live with that truth together when the truths are different?
Yeah. So is it true for me or is it true for everyone? So the thing is, like, I think it is true for everyone, but that what that means is that it simply exists. Right.
It exists as a possibility.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That it's possible.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I don't mean that it's like a destination to aspire to, because I don't think that polyamory is a destination. Right. I think but neither do I think monogamy is a destination. I think that when we say that the truth of the world is that relationships can exist fluidly. I guess what I'm saying actually is just a truth of the world is that relationships can exist fluidly. Or no, the truth of the world is that relationships can exist fluidly. That can, right, is exactly the thing that you said, which is that it's possible.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh, we have been to beautiful places here.
So I'm really enjoying this conversation.
I ditto. And honestly, if the construction hadn't literally just started again full blown, I would keep this conversation going for much longer.
Oh, yeah.
Given, though, the fact that they are fully hammering and jackhammering upstairs, I would love for you to share a little bit more of the details. Like, if people are inspired by this conversation and they're feeling like called to have part of their identity be marked by a flag and they want to have some say in what that flag looks like, what do they do? What do they do?
Yeah, so they go to polyamproud.com, which is polyamproud.com. And you could specifically go to polyamproud.com/vote, where right now there's a countdown clock. Countdown clock is counting down to November 1st, which is when voting will open on a new flag for the polyamorous community. So, but the thing about these flags is that they have gone through this like year and a half long marathon of a funnel to get to where they are. So these are designs that have been seen, reviewed, and edited by professional designers, and then seen and reviewed by people who are considered experts on non-monogamy and polyamory. One of them we're really proud to say is Elizabeth Sheff, who is the great author and researcher who has done so much for the non-monogamous community. Leanne from Polyphilia, who a lot of people might recognize, like just a lot of people who publicly wear the polyamorous identity, have reviewed and given feedback on these designs. And then there's also a committee of people who have volunteered from all over the world. We have from India, Colombia, Mexico, Germany, South Africa, and the United States. People who are also experts in polyamory, who are openly polyamorous, who have been practicing polyamory for years in their life, and who understand, one, what's at stake, and two, the concept that we're trying to represent with this flag. And those 7 people are currently reviewing the final 10 designs, what we've whittled it down to. And they are beautiful. The designs, also the people, but the designs are gorgeous. I think they're many of them are unconventional, and I think surprising, but I think aesthetically lovely and also functionally appropriate as flags, which is something that often gets overlooked when artists or designers create flags. I think basically what I'm saying is they've gone through a really rigorous process to get to this point. And there will be less than 7, so 6 or fewer, that actually go to the public vote, which opens November 1st, and which will close on November 22nd. November 23rd is Polyamory Day, which was started in Canada. And on November 23rd, we will be announcing the winner of the vote.
I am so excited to see the designs. I really am.
Yeah.
I love the probably painstaking work it has gone through. I mean, I can only imagine when you and the other friend decided, like, hey, you want to work on this project? You're like, ooh, a year and a half later. 2 years later.
Oh, we had no idea.
No. Isn't it good? Thank God you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, truly. If I had any idea what this was gonna turn into, I probably would not have done it.
No. Like, hey, do you want to devote 2 years of your life on this thing that you're probably not even getting paid for, and
nope.
You're just doing it.
That's a thing that I think, like, maybe people don't really like. People have accused us of like baiting, like follower baiting, like that we're like just trying to earn followers on Instagram or what. And it's like, no, I have so many better things to do with my time, and we're not receiving money from any of that. Like, no. We've gotten some generous donations, but and we've received a sponsorship from one of our volunteers, actually. But together those things total less than $2,000.
Oh my gosh.
Which is insane.
For, like, the amount of work that you've done. Yeah.
Yeah. 2 years of work.
Thank you.
And
I will just say
volunteers.
Thank you on behalf of the Polyamorous community.
Thank you.
Really, thank you. Thank you for taking the time and diligence to really rally the community and give people a chance to vote and make this a process and finding it important. People like me that kind of brush it off in the beginning, like, meh, whatever, like, it's a flag. Like, I am coming around, like, I'm fully around. I'm like, shit, this is actually really important. And I'm really excited to have something that visually represents like who I am and what I believe and what's possible. And I think it's like such a beautiful vision to rally behind. Like, it's to me, it's so many things. It's possible to love more than one person in the world at a time. It is, I'm empowered to create my own relationships. I believe, I don't know. It's just so much more. It's so much more. I think it really is ushering us into the next level of consciousness of, like that there's more than we can even say. Maybe there's more than one possible truth in the world. Yeah.
And there always will be. I think, often people are like, well, why are you focusing all this energy on a flag? Like, you could be focusing on legal rights, for example, rights for polyamorous people to marry multiple people at the same time, that kind of thing, or to allow multiple parents of a child, like more than 2 parents of a child, to be listed on a birth certificate, for example.
I know people working on that one.
Yeah. So do
Yeah.
I.
No, yeah. But to your point, it's like, why do we judge each other for not working on the thing that most interests us? Like this most interested you. And
Yeah.
like, that's important. It's kind of, we all have different interests and desires. Back to your point, like, why is it that
And
I
skills.
desire this? Not only why is it that I desire loving more than one person at a time, why is it that I desire having a flag to represent this? I don't know. I desire it. Can I trust myself and go down that path? You know, why do you desire that? I don't know. You just do. Like, go for it. That's what you're desiring. Instead of like, you're not desiring the same thing I desire. So there's like, you're doing the wrong thing.
And it's so funny
just
because
like insane to me.
Yeah, and the thing is, I do desire those things. I like, of course, I want there to be. I want to be able to marry multiple partners if that's in my future. You know, like I do desire that, and
we just can't all work on all of it all at the same time. You know, like, let's spread this shit out, people. Like, let's work on whatever calls to us in that moment, whatever we have the ability to work on.
Yeah, and I think also having a flag isn't like taking away from. I think like when we have the flag, fine. Like it's gonna be public use. Like it's gonna be registered in Creative Commons, so anyone can use it at any time. You don't need to give permission or anything. It's for the public. And so to those people who are saying, why aren't you focused on this? When the flag exists, we are sending the design to merchants and creators so that they can produce the flag for you. So we would encourage you to then get a flag, go to your local courthouse where people are getting monogamously married, and then hold that flag up and talk about why you aren't able to get married in that courthouse to your other partner. I think it's like we're working toward the same goals. This is just a different step.
Yeah. No, it's a necessary step. I mean, all of it. Oh my goodness. This has been really, really fantastic.
Yeah, it's been great. I'm so happy that we got to meet and talk.
Yeah, ditto. Is there anything else that you want to share with Amory listeners before you sign off?
Yes. I love you. I love you so much for listening to this podcast and for joining us this November to vote on a flag at polyamproud.com/vote. And you can follow our Instagram. It's at Polyam Proud. We're on Twitter, not as active, and Facebook. But come and check us out. We post all kinds of stuff about non-monogamy and flags in general and things like that. But the big stuff is going on this November. So we'll see you there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.